And what about the Children's Aid Society as a whole? How has that evolved? Because it's really, it's really went through a few iterations over time where you've really needed to explain to the community what the Children's Aid Society does. It doesn't do this. It does, like, it's had sort of a metamorphosis over probably your career.
Yes, absolutely. So when I'm hired in 1985, I'm the 23rd employee hired at the agency. And I think we're at about, and at that time it was just called Nipissing Children's Aid Society. We had, I think now we're about 175, and we've amalgamated with Parry Sound. So it's Nipissing and Parry Sound Children's Aid Society. And you're right. I mean, Children's Aid Society has, is not known. We're known for sort of apprehending kids is what, and we've really taken a lot of time to try to change that sort of narrative within our community. I remember at one point we had changed our name to Child and Family Services in order to be sort of more inclusive and to try to get away from that stigma. But what we found, this was years ago, was that people didn't know who we were anymore. They didn't know who to call. So I remember, and I was just the frontline staff at the time, but we went back to Children's Aid Society. But now, we're multi-service. And a lot of people in the community don't know that. So we do early intervention services. We do youth justice services. And even the way we work with families now is much different. It's much less, I want to say, punitive. There's much more sort of, we try to really engage families in decision. Who knows better about their family than the family themselves and those that sort of surround them. So we're really trying to change the narrative around the work that we want to do and are committed to doing with families.
I was recently listening to an economist talk about, people within social services, how we as a society look at social services, and we're not looking at things in the proper lens, I would say. And so it really talked about, it was something you said there about preventative care. And so the part that jumped out to me was this economist said, do you know what it costs when you put someone in a hospital? Like they were mainly talking about homelessness at this point, but I'm sure it translates to children's issues as well. But you put them into a hospital for a month, it costs $30,000. You incarcerate them for a month, it's $15,000. If they go to a homeless shelter, it's anywhere from $6,000 to $8,000 a month. And currently, what we provide people in need is something like $300 and something a month to find home care, right? So what they were really getting at was we need to lean into preventative care and preventative, just exactly what you said about, as opposed to probably at one time, Children's Aid Society they were known to come in and scoop kids out of homes, right? That's the narrative that you're looking to change. How is it changed now? And is it leading? This is the time of your career where you get to go, okay, I get to reflect.
Yes,
I get to say and reflect.
And I'm a person that's in my head all the time, so I'm always doing it. But it's really interesting you say that, because that hasn't changed from the sort of funding perspective and from the government's perspective. Prevention isn't sort of something that's a priority. I don't get funded at all for prevention services.
Really?
Yeah. So because it's sort of like you stay in your lane, your child protection, you stay in your lane. And so, it's really difficult because, as you say, we can see when we look at what's happening within our society around the homelessness and the sort of opioid crisis that we're facing right now. That's what I find extremely frustrating, is that we need to put money and energy and time in trying to sort of resolve those issues. But what I get frustrated with is that there's nothing happening upstream for kids. So why would we think that we're going to get a different outcome when we're doing nothing to ensure that kids can have a different sort of outcome? And that's, for me, what is so exciting about Elmwood. And because Elmwood is completely upstream sort of services for children and families that are accessing that. It's a community space where children, youth, and families can come. There's tons of preventative stuff happening there. But the interesting part is that, we're being watched very closely to ensure that we're not spending any of our sort of funding allocation in that building. So everything that's happening there, other than sort of the operational costs of the lights and the heat, that's all happening through donations, through grants, through partnerships with our community partners. But it's really exciting because, and the vision for expansion of that space will provide something that doesn't exist in our community and really is upstream. So I love it. That's where a lot of my energy is being put right now.
Yeah.
Because I really want to see that through. Because I think it will make a huge difference for kids and families in our community.
When you took me on the tour of Elmwood, it was a former school?
Yes, École Saint-Paul, primary school.
And it looked like it had gone through some type of transformation into a community space. And you sounded more excited about that and what the possibilities were. You're heading into retirement. How are you going to finish this off?
Well, I'm gonna. I don't know how yet, but it's gonna happen for sure.
How were you able to get the funding, and what are you looking for to make that dream come true?
Yeah, so I think I'd be remiss not to thank Stephen Beauchamp. So he's our donor. So we had purchased that school in 2007, and it really was to have it as our one site for our staff, because currently we're in 3 sites, and that's problematic. But of course you need capital dollars to do that, and that wasn't sort of coming. So it sat empty actually for 10 years. And then we were approached, Ray Beauchamp, who was the manager of HR and finance at the agency. His son, he's retired now, but his son, he owns a payroll company in the States. And he had given his parents $150,000 and said, listen, invest this in the community however you wish to make it a sort of a better place. So Ray had approached us and said, what do you think? And I said, well, leave it with us. We'll give you a few proposals. And so we'd given a few proposals and landed on a youth hub. We thought that would make sort of a difference for the youth that we work for. So we renovated one of the classrooms with that money, and we called it the Beauchamp Hub. And so there was some programming happening there with our youth. And then we were approached by Near North District School Board, and we were asked to do what used to be called a section classroom. It's not called ECPP, for high school kids. And that's for kids that have been either suspended or expelled from school and are really struggling. So it's more one-on-one, and they work at their own pace. And the goal is always to get them back into the schooling system. And sometimes it happens, and sometimes they graduate actually from the classroom. We've had a few really exciting graduations there. And then we were approached to do the same for grades 7 and 8. And so otherwise, and then it's sort of we started to sort of do small things in there. We opened a clothing boutique, and which is, sort of like a mini Value Village, where because we saw that our service recipients were really struggling financially. We know that poverty's alive and well. And as well as our foster parents, that were sort of said we could, we use the clothing, but, we could recycle that clothing within the agency. So we opened a clothing boutique. And then during the pandemic, we opened it started with a cabinet for food pantry for some of our youth who were really struggling with food insecurity. And then it sort of just started growing from there. And you saw the space. And Stephen Beauchamp came about a year and a half ago, and the youth were there. We hadn't coached them or anything. And he came with his wife, beautiful, wonderful people, salt of the earth people. And the youth were there, so we brought them in to meet the youth, and it was absolutely magical. And wish I would have taped it. We had a youth talking about how he was depressed. He was in his basement. Somebody convinced him to come, and he now comes every day. It's sort of he's made connections. He now has friends. He's learned about sort of independence skills. And so anyway, we left that meeting, and Stephen said, I'm giving you another $1 million.
Wow.
US, which is 1.3 million, which is, I cried. Gives me shivers just thinking about it. Yeah. And and we have a youth advisory committee at the agency, and, everything that happens in that space is youth informed. So we went to them and we said, what now? Like, what are your priorities, with sort of a renovation? So they said, first priority was a big kitchen. And when we think of our own sort of families and where does the magic happen? Happens in
kitchen.
kitchens, cooking together, and they wanted to eat together. So it was a kitchen. The second piece was sporting equipment. They really wanted the sporting piece. And the third was tech. So we moved forward with renovations, and you saw the space. And the vision really for that space is not, it's called Elmwood, and it's intentionally called Elmwood and not the Children's Aid Society, because we wanted that to be really an open, low barrier space for children, youth, and families. So, youth that are coming in right now, and the bulk of them are child welfare kids right now, somehow affiliated with the agency. They don't have to be in the care of the society, but and the only reason for that is because the staff that I have in there are either by donation or grants, because again, I can't spend any money there. But the vision is really to open it up to the entire community. And you come in, you say it's low barrier in the sense that you don't need a referral. We ask your name, we ask for an emergency contact, and off you go. We have a huge gym, and we have 4 spaces that are open to any community. So you could, like the city came the other day, they're having a big meeting in one of our rooms. There's no charge. We ask for a donation, or to the food pantry, which is now expanded greatly, as has the clothing boutique. So the gym is used every single day. We have from, young kids. It's been designated, Elmwood's been designated as early on through DSAB. So that's little munchkins who use the gym, and seniors come and pickleball in the gym. And again, it's free. There's no cost to that. The community kitchen, which is a huge industrial kitchen, is also open to the community, as are 2 sort of meeting spaces.